Welcome back to the American Dream Podcast Season 3. Now it's time to hear what Americans think of their dream. I'm your host, Ekaterina. Привет! I'm in a studio with Amber Dlugosh. You are one of the first people I've met 9 years ago when I moved to the States, and I was a sophomore in high school. You were my English teacher, which was the most important subject for me to study, of course. And ever since I met you, I remembered you as a perfect example of a fun teacher, and I'm very excited to have you on my podcast today. Welcome!
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So tell me anything you want us to know about you.
I am in my 12th year as an educator at Bolivar High School.
12th.
Yes, I know, right? It's hard to believe. Grew up in the Midwest. I'm originally from the Lake of the Ozarks area. Very much so grew up in the evangelical church, and now I am a out LGBTQ member, and excited to talk about that today.
Okay, so let's just dive into this. Describe who are you considering yourself as? How would you describe your sexuality?
Well, I think it's really hard to label. That's actually something I've really wrestled with quite a bit. I did not know I was a member of the LGBTQ community until a couple of years ago. And so that's a very interesting fact about me. I've wrestled back and forth what letter do I line up with the most in that little acronym or whatever you would call it. And I would say I'd probably closest to bisexual. But even that, I think it's hard to nail down. I think a lot of people, I think of it as a spectrum. And I think we just fall somewhere on the spectrum. It just kind of depends on who you love.
Mm-hmm. So when did you first realize you were a part of LGBTQ plus community? And when did you begin telling others?
Gosh, it was a couple of years ago. Honestly, it was one of my best friends was trying to figure out if she was gay. And we were processing a lot on the phone. And she had a really dear friend who was a lesbian. And she was like, I've been asking her a lot of questions and curious about how did she know? And when she was processing her answers, I thought, oh, crap, this, I think, is me. And that having grown up in the church was really scary. And the way that her friend realized, she was like, your friendships with women are just different. And I started to piece together that one of my closest friends, I was like, oh no, I think this friendship falls into that as well. And what she's describing. And it kind of sent me into a tailspin because having had attraction to men and now realizing, I also have attraction to women. And growing up in the church, you weren't supposed to be friends with men because you could potentially have some sort of sexual attraction that could grow. And so you couldn't be alone with them. It had to be group activities. Men were typically, options for sexual activity and then marriage, flipped marriage and then sexual activity. And so it was very scary to feel like, well, can I not have friends anymore? It was a really, I would say, intense time of turmoil and a lot of introspection. I didn't really talk to anyone other than her about it for quite a while. And then that friend that I had an attraction to, we both started chatting. She was married at the time. And we had some very serious conversations of, can you have an emotional affair with your best friend? What does this look like? What is happening here between us? Because neither one of us knew that we were gay. And so a lot of hard conversations amongst she and I, amongst her and her husband, amongst the three of us, and slowly but surely started telling people and coming out to others, my family first, and then some close friends. And it was very messy because all of that was intertwined, and a lot of spiritual deconstruction too. I was deconstructing my religion. And so there's a lot of explosion happening all at once.
So what was the main thing that helped you understand your sexuality besides your friend?
Yeah. I did a lot of Google searches too before I was able to.
I feel like those are terrible to make just based off of when you get sick and you Google your symptoms.
Oh yeah.
It might be different, but I don't know. Google is just
I can't tell you how many times I Googled, how do you know you're gay? How do you know, what if you're falling in love with your best friend? So many Google searches that, they were helpful, but also terrifying all at the same time. Really what I had to do is learn to listen to myself. And that was not something I was used to. My religious upbringing told me to not trust myself. And so learning to really sink deep, reading a lot of Glennon Doyle, her work, and she has a book called Untamed, where she talks about your inner knowing, and you kind of have to sink below the chaos in your mind, those what ifs and all the fear, and to just go, okay, what is the more peaceful space below that, and kind of follow that more gut instinct was something I really had to work on.
So in the past, have you ever been outed by someone, and how did you handle it? How did you react?
I have not, but I think that's different for me because I didn't know. I wasn't closeted really for that long. But interestingly enough, I was terrified of people thinking that I was gay for years. And so having grown up in the evangelical church, that's like one of the cardinal sins. You know, that's the thing that gets you cast out very quickly. And so I didn't really date very often. I had lots of friendships, and my interests were different than a lot of other people. And so I was terrified of people thinking that I was gay. And so I worked even really hard around anytime there was speculation that felt like being outed almost to me. And I had a really weird fear, even from whenever I was younger, like middle school, high school, that somehow someone would think that they heard like a word from God that I was. And so I was really scared of being outed by God himself, almost, that there would be some sort of word given to people.
How did you overcome this?
Oh, gosh.
This fear?
It's been very hard. A lot of therapy and a lot of deconstructing what I think of God and what I think of religion, and realizing that this picture of this powerful, all-knowing being that's there to smite anyone who doesn't follow the rules exactly to a T, that is not what I believe in any longer, has really helped. And I think embracing it, actually coming out and owning that as a part of who I am, has helped with that quite a bit. Yeah.
So what are some of the factors behind your decision to be out or not to be out with certain people?
So for the most part, I'm pretty out. I'm pretty open. That's something that my now wife and I have talked about quite a bit, that we don't want to live in that fear. We want to be very open and honest. We spent a lot of time hiding pieces of who we are because of church. Just in terms of any imperfection, you learn to mask it and conceal it, and that we don't want to live that way. We want to live in an authentic way that embraces the whole messy spectrum of being human. And to do that, we have to be open about who we are. However, I won't lie that there is some repercussion that comes from that. And there's a lot of assumptions too. Like just recently I went to the dentist, and you have the awkward dental hygienist small talk where they're like, oh, so what are you doing for Thanksgiving? And what does your husband do? And that weird correction every time of like, oh, it's actually my wife. And I'm sorry. Like, and so there are those moments where sometimes I just roll my eyes and think, I don't even want to deal with that right now, because every little conversation can sometimes feel like coming out over and over and over again. And so it can get kind of hard.
So what has been the worst and the best part of discovering your sexuality?
I think the best part has just been learning to embrace that authenticity. It takes a big weight off when you stop running from the fear of what people might think about you for any reason. And I think part of the gift of being a part of the LGBTQ community is that it forces you to kind of come to terms with that, and to realize that not everyone's going to like you, not everyone's going to accept you, but that there is a freedom to have that burden lifted of worrying about it all of the time. I have lost friends, and it's put a strain on certain relationships, and it, like I said, does make some things more awkward or complicated. I think it's hard to separate out the coming out from the relationship of seeing my now wife's, marriage they were already in the process of separating before this, but it all got so intertwined and so messy that was really difficult. And so some of that excitement of maybe a new relationship had extra burdens on it, and just trying to deal with my own internalized homophobia and just a lot of that fear. But I think moving through that has been a really huge gift in the long run.
You've mentioned a little bit about your friends that you've lost. Was it easy for you to come out to your family?
No. My little sister, it was awesome. It brought us so much closer together. But my family, my parents, it was really hard for them, and I think still is sometimes. They're both very supportive of me, but not supportive of it's hard to choose the words, correctly. I think I speak for them in saying that they're not supportive of our marriage, that they still do not agree with this and they don't understand it. They would both say that they very much so are like trying to learn how to be loving, but that it's so against what they were taught was right or wrong that it's hard for them to see our lives going well and to see us both healthy and happy and our kids doing so well. Hearing what they've heard for their entire lives about this being a very dangerous, bad, horrible thing. And so I think they're on their own journey trying to work through that, but it has been difficult.
So you've mentioned that you are now married.
Yes.
How long you've been married for?
Oh, we got married in June.
Okay, so it hasn't
long.
even been a year.
No,
Okay, 1 year anniversary is coming up soon. Okay, that's exciting. So tell me a little bit about how you and your wife went to her family to introduce yourself as a couple. How did that happen? Your wife also has kids.
Yes.
I did some research.
Okay.
I know this.
Yes. So do you mean that family or her family?
Let's start with kids first.
Okay. So it's actually really unique. I'd known them for years. So we met 10 years prior to when we were officially in a relationship. We went to the same church together. That's actually how we got a lot closer, as we were kind of doing that deconstructing of our faith together. We go out on lots of walks and talk about, what is Christianity? What are all these rules? What do we actually believe? And so I was in and out of their home. Their home was a huge hosting space for college students whenever I was in college. And so I knew them for quite a while. And so her kids, we were very familiar. They actually called me the family best friend for a while. So I was in and out. Their home was definitely a safe space for me. It was one of the only spaces where I felt like I could really be myself and be very honest about the things I was processing. It was where I would go to have a good cry or a good laugh. And so, so we knew each other for a long time. What was hard was introducing this new relationship to the kids. And so that was a really difficult road, and we really let them lead a lot of that for a while. So there was a time frame where they didn't really want me around, and there was to completely support that. Like, I wanted to support that for them. They were losing a piece of what they knew as family, and they were navigating a hard time altogether, and they needed to just be with their mom. And they didn't need new me in there. And
another
so,
mom.
Exactly. At all. So, really stepped back for a while and then let them kind of dictate when they wanted me back and how they wanted that to look. And it was a little different for every kid. And and now we're all together.
What about her parents?
So it was her mom and stepdad, and then lots of brothers and sisters. She is the baby of 6.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
American families, of course.
So, well, I mean, they are a big Hungarian family. So it's a very beautiful and loud, and there's so much good food and like the most endearing arguing happening all the time and banter, and but also very religious. And so they were very hesitant. And so again, that's been different for every member. There are some that have been very supportive, some that are kind of like my parents, we love you, but we don't agree. And some that are more so like, we don't really want to talk about it. And so again, it's difficult, but honoring everyone's space. Everyone gets to have their own thoughts and their own process. And when you go through a big life change, it impacts the people that you love. They're kind of grieving and processing, and also maybe being excited for new things for you. There's a lot of confusing emotions to navigate. So we went, I got to meet them. It was a couple summers ago. We went out just for a couple of days, just the two of us, so that we could all meet under some like non-stressful, not around a holiday or anything like that, and just had some good dinners and went on some hikes and had a bonfire and just kind of eased into that. And it was really, really good time.
When did your wife come out?
The same exact time. Yeah. So we were both, I mean, we were like,
when you met each other, you came out basically.
Well, we knew each other for the 10 years. We were just friends. And then it was the like, it feels like there's something here. Can you have the emotional affair with a friend? Like, how does that work?
The friend you were talking about. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So, we were both coming out at the same exact time and trying to navigate eventually maybe being in a relationship together. And it was so messy. Yeah.
How did you decide to get married? Who proposed?
I proposed first. We both decided, so I'm a very nervous person and I second guess everything, and she's very confident. And so
perfect balance.
Yes, that's true. So I had told her I want to be able, we both bought rings and we were trying to figure out like, how do you do that? You know, the norm is that some man gets down on his knee and surprises a girl, whatever. So it's like, well, what do you do when you're two women? And we wanted to make it special and make it true to us. And it felt like, okay, I want to make sure that I ask first. And then once I ask, you can ask however you would like after. But I don't want you to feel like you forced me into a thing or pressured me. And I really want to know that I am ready. And so it was very, very simple. I asked her while she was making pancakes one morning, just like at home in the kitchen. It was, yeah. And then later on that day, she had letters from the boys and while we were on a walk, and asked me as well. So it was beautiful. It was very, very beautiful.
Oh my gosh.
Very simple.
So before this podcast, of course, I sent questions to all of my guests, and you messaged me and you said that you don't know which generation of immigrants you are. But you've mentioned a little bit about your partner.
Yes.
And she has a bit of an interesting story. Do you mind sharing that?
So she is a second generation immigrant. Both of her parents escaped the Hungarian Revolution, and then they were both very small children at the time, found each other after that, got married, and then immigrated to America. Yeah.
And I actually did a little research about you, and I found out some information based on your last name.
Oh, good.
I want to share something with you. So from my opinion, I thought a Dlugosh sounds a little French.
Oh.
But according to this website, familysearch.com, besides United States, your last name is most popular in Poland and Germany.
Okay.
And the word Dlugosh in Polish is a nickname for a tall person.
Oh,
did you know that?
I did not know that.
And this is actually crazy because I have some Polish in me too.
Really?
So we need to take DNA test. I feel like we're related.
We share that.
So, the name of this podcast is the American Dream Podcast. So let's switch from the, LGBTQ community of that background of your life to your opinion on the American dream. Because for lots of immigrants, the American dream is just to be out, just to have your dream as love who you want here in America. What do you think of the concept of the American dream?
I think it is so different for a lot of people, but it has a common thread, that this idea of wanting to be able to live your own life. That's actually, my wife is not here currently because she is away in Maine where she's from, celebrating the life of both of her fathers. Actually, her biological father and her stepfather have recently passed away. And we just talked on the way here that she was really realizing that her biological dad, who escaped Hungary, came here not speaking any English and made this life for himself. He was a very hardworking man. She said that drive in him and in my mom was part of my coming out, like this desire to make your own life and knowing this is going to be very difficult, but it's worth it to be able to see your own dreams come to fruition and kind of have the life that you want. And I think that that's a key component of the American dream for a lot of people.
Do you believe in it? Does it exist still?
I think it doesn't. I think it's a piece that is really important, but I think we're missing maybe a bigger picture there, because I think there is so much beauty in making our own world, shooting for our own dreams, making our own names, living into our identities. But I think sometimes in America, we maybe build a lot of our own little solo empires as a result of that. And we forget that we're a part of a bigger, greater good as well. And we miss out on some of the communal experience because we spend so much time kind of competing against one another to build our own little lives. That I think we miss out on sitting around a much larger figurative table with other people too.
That's deep. That's
Thank you.
Deep answer. I love that. So what is your American dream? Or I guess just a dream, because you are American. You probably are living an American dream for most immigrants.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit more of that. I wish that there was more sharing of life. I would love to have, my wife and I call a crowded table, to quote the Highwomen song. We want to have a home where there are people of differences coming around to share a meal together. We want to see people who think they could never get along find a way to live side by side. And I think that would be my American dream, is being able to live my own identity out while also really partnering with a lot of other people who I can learn from and who could maybe learn from me.
What advice would you give to the LGBTQ plus immigrants coming to the United States?
I would say, be very excited because there is a lot of freedom here, but to know that it's also not always entirely safe, that it is likely more safe than other places, but we're still growing. It's still new. I think the idea of inclusion for the LGBTQ people is still very new on our timeline of America. And so that there are spaces that are not accepting and there are spaces that are not safe yet. And I think that it will become that way. But to come excited, but also maybe with a little bit of wisdom and some trepidation of where to really sow that excitement.
Mm-hmm. And what advice would you give to the younger American people who are still questioning their sexuality?
Gosh, give it some time and space. No frantic Googling.
You learned your lesson.
Yes. I think that we put so much weight on figuring ourselves out when it's maybe more of just a journey. And so holding it loosely, let it kind of unfold and just spend time with yourself. Rather than constantly having to figure out a name or a label or a category to put yourself in. Just do things that you enjoy, learn more about who you are and let it unfold naturally. Don't rush it. Don't force it. You don't have to know yet. It'll be beautiful whenever it reveals itself.
Mm-hmm. And finally, Amber, what is love?
Just ending with a simple question, aren't you? Gosh, I've thought about this question. How in the world do you even put vocabulary to this? I think I have completely deconstructed a lot of my Christian upbringing. And yet the one thing that I still hold to is this idea that God is love. Because I can't understand what God is, or who God is, or what that force looks like. And I can't do the same thing with love. It's like these two giant mysteries that you get little pieces of or tastes of, or this inkling that there's something so much bigger than you. And yet you can't hammer it down. It seems like the moment you try to grab it too tight, it slips through your hands. And so I think that there is love as this unseen force throughout all of the world. I think it's a thing that ties us together. I think it's a thing we all want to offer to other people and to receive from others. I think it's hidden within nature. And I think when my dog makes eye contact with me, there's love there. I think there's love within good food and within even the bacteria in our gut biomes, for goodness sakes. It's weird as it sounds. I just think there's so much love to be explored that we maybe don't even realize.
Well, thank you so much, Amber, for visiting me today. We are upon our break. We'll be back right after this. I'm in the studio with Dakota Jones. You are known as Jungle Jesus here locally. You have your own series on Snapchat and you are obsessed with animals. And most importantly, you own a turtle.
I do, yes. Hi, guys. I'm Dakota T. Jones, and I have a giant, he will be giant someday, a sulcata tortoise, and he'll live to over 100 years old. It's crazy.
My gosh, I love that. I used to have a turtle, too, when I lived in Russia, so we already are bonding on something.
Yes.
You are also a part of LGBTQ plus community, which is the main topic of our episode today. And with you, I will be learning a little bit about how does American freedom in sexuality attracts more immigrants, and how do sexual minorities value the concept of the American dream. So let's dive in. First question, when and where were you born?
So I was born in Springfield, Missouri, actually, and grew up in Rogersville, Missouri. And I was here for about 17 years before I had moved to LA for about 6.5 years.
Okay, and when did you first realize that you were an LGBTQ plus member?
Yeah, I guess this is my earliest LGBTQ plus memory. I definitely didn't come out until I was 23 years old. So it was something that I had tried to suppress for most of my life. However, I remember in kindergarten, there was this boy and I was like, he is so cute. And I was like, why doesn't he like me? But I quickly realized that like in the school, it was boys like girls, girls like boys, and that wasn't allowed. And so, I have memories dating back all the way to kindergarten of me like crushing after boys.
Mm-hmm. So when did you begin to tell others? When did you came out? You said you were 23.
Yeah, I was 23. However, I did one time on my 21st birthday, I got a little tipsy with my best friend at the time. And she was like, hey, like, let's do some truth or dare. Let's let's do that. And so I remember telling her that I wasn't gay, but I told her sometimes I feel like I'm more sexually attracted to men than women. And then she like stopped and looked at me, and then I was like, I take it back, never mind. And I tried to like play it off, but that was like the only time before I was 23 that I came out. And she like at that point, she like never brought it up again, never tried to like pressure me, like always made sure that like I would come out when I was ready. Mm-hmm. But at 23, I remember going on a family vacation, and I was like, this is the last family vacation where everything's going to be normal. And I was like, because after this family vacation, I have to be myself, and I have to like start experimenting that side and seeing if it truly is what I think that I want, because it's always been in my head, but I've never been able to act on it. So I wanted to be able to try that out to see if what all those years of those thoughts in my head, if they were really true, or if it was just something that I could maybe, kick or get rid of, because it's harder. This type of life is harder. And I always grew up, hearing it was wrong, or, from certain grandparents hearing it was a mental illness. And so like I was terrified and would hide myself for the majority of my life.
Mm-hmm. So what were your early coming out experiences like?
The earliest were really good, like, because I was in California at the time, and it's super accepting there, super loving. And like, I remember coming out to some of my friends and them being like, wait, really? Like, are we really doing this right now? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, I never thought this day would come. And I'm like, what do you mean? And so actually, when I had told my friend that, she's like, well, you're going to hate me because I invited this guy to this party tonight to meet you. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I just came out to you. Like, let me breathe a little bit. But yeah, so some of those memories were fun because it was like the exciting like times. I lived with an older lady. She was like almost 80 years old, and I rented a part of her house from her in California. And I remember sitting on the side of her bed and being like, I have something to tell you. And, when you're talking to someone who's 80 years old, sometimes you don't know how they're going to react, especially on a topic like this. Mm-hmm. And so I told her that I liked guys, and she was just so happy for me and was just like, I'm so happy that you're going to be living, as I hear on the news, your true, authentic self. And I was like, that's so cute.
Progressive.
Yes, very progressive. So those were my earliest memories. And then when it was time to tell my family, that was a lot harder. And I love my family so much, but it was a very hard hit for them. And, looking back at home videos and stuff like that, I'm like, how did you guys not know? Yeah. I literally was like dancing around like a little fruitcake. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I was always that way, but I was just taught, I think, by society at a young age, like, oh, well, you can't move like that, or you can't dress up at playtime with the kids and pretend to be the princess. You have to be the prince, who rescues the princess. And I was like, I always wanted to be the princess to get rescued, but I think, yeah, when they realized the words that were coming out of my mouth, like, I like men, I've really tried my whole life for my family to be straight and to try to date women, but it's not for me. And it was like my whole family had to like mourn the death of who they thought I was. That's like their best description of how they could explain it. And I was like, wow, because to me it was like my rebirth of like me being excited and like being able to like still honor the life that I had, but add on to that and be able to be my true self. And so it was definitely hard for them for a long time. However, they never lost their love for me or anything like that.
That's good.
And we always remained like in communication. And then eventually, whenever I did have a partner and it was like time for me to come visit for my sister's wedding, I was like, well, if I'm coming, he's coming. And I never would have thought that I would have had like my family and a partner and to like coexist in like this loving environment, no matter what maybe people like, no matter what certain members of my family may agree of what's right or wrong, they like put it aside for like, we love our son. And if we want him in our lives, we've got to like accept this person as well. And they brought my partner in, and it was a super loving experience that was just eye-opening for me, but also my parents, because they got to see how happy I was, and also just like how great my partner was at the time, and how he added joy to their lives, and it was brought in like a son. And so it was a very healing journey. You know, it started off tough, but I definitely got to say that I've been more lucky than some of the other people in the community.
Have you ever been outed by someone?
Ooh, you know what?
And how did you handle it?
Yeah. I remember there were times in school where I wasn't even out yet because I was still trying to do the whole girl thing, you know? But like anytime I would be like in theater or anything like that, people would be, oh, he's gay, he's this. And I just remember like anytime someone used that word, because at the time to me that was like a bad word, because I was like, it was always used in a negative.
Like an insult.
Yeah.
Almost.
And so I just remember every time they were kind of like outing me before I outed myself. And so every time they did that in school, it would really like cut me to the core, because I was just like terrified of like maybe exploring who I really was. And I was like, well, what are they saying? And are they saying what I really am? Because what I feel is a happy thing, but what they're making it seem is a negative thing. So I don't think I was ever necessarily outed after I came out. And like if there were certain people who didn't know, but before I came out, I feel like I was outed plenty of times by plenty of people.
How did you react most of the time? Was it like self-protected?
Very self-protective, very defensive. I used to do interviews at AfterBuzz TV in California. And so I was doing a show, and 3 of my co-hosts were talking about how, you know, I was, you know, kind of more feminine, and maybe I could be, like passed off as gay. And I remember I got so defensive, and on air, I like denounced that I was like, no, I'm going to clear the rumors right now. I am not gay. I was like, I love women. I was like, I'm so girl crazy. And like, I just, you know, haven't found the right one yet. And I was such a liar. I was such a liar. Sometimes I go back and watch that clip, but I was just terrified and like just angry, because I was like, I knew at that time I couldn't be true to myself. So I was just really bitter and angry a lot of the times whenever it came to someone bringing it up. I was like, no, not at all.
Okay, so what are some of the factors behind your decision to be out or not to be out with certain people?
Yeah, I think that, so I'm pretty much, I mean, I'm totally out now as far as like.
In community.
Yeah. When I came out, I posted a video. It was really sweet on my Instagram, and it was me and my partner at the time. And I'm like, at this house in California, and like looking out at the view, and then all of a sudden someone's hand comes up on my back and it turns me around, and it's like him, and it like reveals, and it was like really cute. And so like that pretty much outed me to everybody. And when that video was gonna drop, I had told my parents, and I just told my parents this is what's gonna happen. And so they told my other grandparents that it was going to happen, because there was one set of grandparents that I just didn't tell. I was like, you've got to help me with this one. I just don't think I could tell them. So I guess because I chose not to come out to my grandparents, a certain part of my set of grandparents at the time, I was like, I'll let my parents, or if they see it on social media or hear about it through passing, then they'll hear about it to certain people. And then once it kind of came out, and then I had like came back to Missouri with my partner at the time, there was like no hiding it at that point. So at that point, pretty much everybody knew. However, once I ended up getting a job after like a different job, like years later after him and I had broke up, I remember seeing some people from my past that I was like, whoa, they have no idea about me being gay. And so that was interesting. I chose not to be out with them at work because I was a little bit worried, because they're very, very extremely religious, and they know a lot of my family. They know a lot of like my old friends and stuff like that. And it was an older person too who was very set in their ways. So I was like, there's no way I want to tell this person. So that was the only person, I guess, that I didn't come out to until recently. I had worked with him for about a year now. And I was like, hey, like he said something about a girl. And I was like, no, it wasn't a girl. I was engaged to a man. And he was like, you're straight, aren't you? And I was like, no.
Clearly, after you said you were engaged to a man.
Right. I was like, no. And he ended up coming back to me at work the next day and being like, kind of giving me a hard time about it, which wasn't appropriate at work at all. I was like, first of all, like, don't on work time come to me with some like homophobic stuff. But, you know, there are a lot of people that won't get it. And like, I've come to peace with that because those were the people that I lived for back in the day. Those people that I used to like work for, like at the Christian theater I used to work at, or like family. Those were the people that I hid myself from. And those are the people that I decided I'm going to hold this secret because I love all these people and I don't want to hurt them. But then it came to a point where I was like, I'm really hurting myself. I think I've lived a lot happier of a life since then. I mean, I've always had like a really happy childhood growing up. And so I always tell my family, like, just because I hid this part from you for a long time doesn't mean that I didn't have the best childhood. Because I was very lucky to have like an amazing family, very great, like family dynamic and everything like that. So if anything, we just had to work through like a year and a half of like a really hard time. But being able to still have my family love me, maybe not always agree with everything that I do or say, but at the end of the day, we're still a family unit. And I think that so many parents, no matter if they're going to like fully agree with their children or not, they could learn from my parents for sure. Just because like at the end of the day, the love is there and you don't want to lose your child. You know what I mean?
So have your decision influenced anybody from your friend cycle or family cycle to come out as well?
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, yes. And it's so crazy. It's so funny. I was actually just hanging out with my cousin last night and telling them that I was going to do this interview with you. And I was like, you know, on 96.5, she's Katie from Russia. And she's like, oh my gosh, you're going to go talk to Katie. And I was like, yeah. And so when I had first came out, she was very angry at me because we had grown up very tight and we'd always talk to each other about like our lives. And we'd always made this pact back in the day that like we were going to remain virgins until marriage. And I was like, we're going to do it. And like, you know, like we're going to like not tell, like we're not going to like give in to that because we're going to wait till marriage. And like, it was just like this funny thing that we always had this pact. So you would have thought that we would have came out to each other. You know what I mean? But when I came out, she said she was blindsided. She was angry at me and she didn't talk to me for a long time. And then we had a more honest conversation where she was like, I think that I'm actually lesbian. And I was angry at you because you were getting to like live your truth and I was still like having to be in the closet. And so having that relationship with my cousin blossomed so much just because like, you know, we lost contact for a while. And then I deep down knew though, like I always knew you were, you know what I mean? And then another one of my cousins came out to me as bi and said that like whenever my grandparents or something were saying something against it, she was like, well, I'm bi. And that like was like freaked my grandparents out because they're like, what do you mean you're bi? You like guys. And so I've had a lot of great family members come to my support as well. And even my grandparents have come a long way, especially because they even really at the time when I had a partner really brought him in and loved him as well. So it just goes to show you that even the most closed-minded person can learn to love and to accept and to open their mind, even if it's just a little bit.
So do you date currently? And if so, how would you describe your dating life?
I do. I'm trying to be loved. And I'm like, I've put myself out there. I'm on Tinder. I'm on Bumble. I'm on Hinge. I'm on Grindr. I'm on it all. And most of it I use for pure entertainment because it is hilarious, especially Grindr, because Grindr like is mainly for people who want to just like do hookups. And like, that's not me. However, I love just going through my messages. And that's how I get my entertainment. Like I could start a whole podcast of like what people send me in the DMs. Like I'm going to bring up a cool example. This old man with this cringy beard that was like down to his like belly button that looked like it hadn't been washed in 3 weeks.
Ew.
He was like, "Hey buddy, can I pay you to come over and put your head over my bathtub and I want to shampoo and massage your head?" And I was
Okay,
like,
for how much?
I was like, that's right. Right. I was like,
For BMW?
right.
Maybe I can think.
I'm like, yeah, I was so
For $20?
tempted. Right.
Thank you. Next.
Right. I'm like, it depends on the price. No, I literally wish I could have. I wanted to respond, but then I was scared because once you open up that communication with them, they can literally just like keep messaging
Yeah.
you. And I'm like, no. But I wanted to know how much he would have paid. However, there is like a lock of my hair that like I cut off recently and it's going for about $200 right now. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. People are crazy. So like, hey, if someone wants to buy my hair.
I would buy your hair.
Yes.
Let's collaborate.
Okay.
I can find you a rich man.
There we go.
And you can give me your hair.
Let's
Perfect.
do it. Let's do it.
So you said you meet most of the people that you go on a date with through dating apps. Any
Yes.
other ways? Did you ever thought about going out like in the bar? Do you think that's a good way to meet people at all?
So I used to say no because I feel like when you go to the bar, usually you're going to meet people who are there who want to like just hook up for the night.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, but then when you're meeting people online apps are
Same
literally
thing.
the dating like bars. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
So I feel like I would love to meet someone organically. Like that would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
However, the only time I met someone organically, it got me in so much trouble. So I like.
What happened?
Well, so it was a place that I worked and I was like, well, it's a coworker. And he was like straight. And I was like, like he just like was like, I want to like, he's like, I think I'm bi and I think I want to experiment and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. And so like, I got like my feelings invested and then he ended up being angry because I had told a few of my friends about us, which was my bad. I shouldn't have outed him to a few of our friends. That was my bad. But I was just excited because I was like, this is exciting. But yeah, that was like the one time that I met someone organically and it got me in trouble because then you're working with those people for a certain amount of time and you have to be around them and it's awkward. And so, yeah, I was like, maybe I'll stick to dating apps.
Okay, do you know anything about your immigrational history of your family? Where is your original first generation immigrants family come from?
So it's so interesting because I'm like, I think a little bit of a mixing pot. I think so. My grandma, I know I'm like a fourth Indian, like Native American.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
like, I believe I have about like a fourth of that. And so that is definitely from my mom's side. And then my dad's side, I think there's a little bit of like Irish. And then there's also like, we have this like family tree thing that like links back to like, we're like direct descendants from, I forget if it was like King William III or something like that. He was the one that was called King William the Bastard because everyone hated him.
Oh.
But like technically, if I killed enough people, I could be in the throne. You know what I mean? Like... We're there, you know what I mean?
Wow. Royalty here.
Royalty blood.
Okay, so it's Irish and Native Americans.
Yes.
So how did you learn about your family tree?
You know, I learned about it from this really creepy guy who was really great at it at the time, right? He was so good at it, he made our family tree and we learned so much about it. I was really young when I knew this person. And then once I came out, this guy who created our family tree, he like started sending me all these freaking creepy messages and started like telling me how like he used to think of me when I was a kid and like all this stuff. And so I was really upset because I was like, I looked up to this person and I felt like he kind of groomed me. It just so happened to be the guy who did our whole family tree. But yeah, but if he did one good thing, he let our family know where we came from.
So why did your family immigrate to the States? Do you know the reason?
Honestly, I don't know. And it's because I think as far as I can think back, as far as most of my family, like they've all been like in the US.
Well, yeah, you're like Native American part of the family. But what about Irish?
I don't know. I really would like to know more about that. I think that would be an interesting thing to know more about, because I think it comes from my grandpa's side, but most of his family like has already passed away. So I guess I'd have to like, I need to like have a sit down
really
with my
dig
grandpa.
into this.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about the American dream? I know you're American. You're probably living it right now. So, but what do you think about it as a concept? Do you believe in it? Does it exist?
I believe that there's not like a one set thing for the American dream. I think that so many people have like this set vision of like a white picket fence and like having like a nice house and like being able to just like have a nice job and to like be able to like live in America and like have that freedom and everything like that. For me, I feel like the American dream, I'm not living it yet, which is, I mean, some people might get angry at me for saying very blessed. I'm very blessed in the fact that I'm getting to like do what I love. Mm-hmm. However, to me, the American dream is feeling that sense of like comfort, security, love, and equality from others. I think that like being in a relationship that would make me feel loved and safe. That's my like American dream, I think. Mm-hmm. And then all of the rest we can build from there. So like we'll, buy a house and then we'll decorate it the way that we want to. And like, I guess my American dream is very different than what most people would say.
That was going to be my next question. What is your American dream?
The American dream for me would be to have like a really nice property somewhere in California or something with a very nice like modern feel to it, like very like, have you seen like Kim Kardashian's house? It's very modern and very like simplistic.
Yes. I love that style too.
Oh my god,
it's so clean, lots of space.
Yes, so something like that, some like fortress where I can literally just like, that's my home base. And like I think having your own space would be a dream to me. Because right now I'm kind of like in a, like moving back from California, I'm staying with my parents until I figure out where I'm going to be moving back to, if I'm staying here, if I'm going back to California. So I think having that like solitude of like, this is my place. I can do whatever I want here. I can create whatever I want here. I want I have like green screen equipment that I'm going to have to start using for the show. I want to have a whole room where I'm like, I set all that up and have like a studio room. And then, like, I don't have to be, like, rich. I mean, that would be amazing. But, like, I just really just want to be happy. I just want to be happy and live my life next to the person that, like, I love. And I think that, like, for me, if I have that person someday, that's going to do so much for me. And the rest kind of isn't as important, I think, necessarily for me. Because I find so much joy and love in, like, being with someone else.
So you've mentioned that you're very blessed and your life might be a dream of a lot of immigrants. What advice would you give to LGBTQ plus immigrants coming to the United States?
Wow, I would say, depending on where they're coming from, I'm sure that if they're not able to be out with their family, or if they feel like they're coming here because they've heard, oh wow, like I can be myself here and I can like
I feel like that's mostly the reason for immigrants that come to America for this specific reason, is because they can't be themselves in that country that they're coming from.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that like first of all, welcome. I'm like, that's exciting. And then two, just be extremely careful with your heart, because like I think maybe if they're used to having to hide that, and then they get here and then it's so open and it's so like accepted, sometimes it's easy to get taken advantage of by certain people. Most people don't have your best interest at heart. Unfortunately, a lot of people fetishize immigrants as far as like when dating, they'll be like, oh, well, like they'll like try to like target people who are like from other countries and stuff like that because they think it's like a kink to them or something, which it's like really sad because it's like, so I would say just be very careful with who you trust. But also like it's exciting, and like just make sure that like when you're experiencing certain things, like just make sure that it's with people that you really trust and that you really feel like have your best interest at heart. I hope that's good advice.
But what advice would you give to young people who are still questioning their sexuality?
I would say you don't have to like make a decision. You don't have to make a decision right now if you don't want. Like if you're questioning, that is still a very valid part of the LGBTQ community, because like Q is questioning. So people who are questioning, and if you're young, you're still very what is the word? You're very like easily swayed, I guess you could say, by like the world around you. I would say don't bottle it up. Talk to people, because the worst thing you can do is bottle it up, because if you do that, then you're going to just feel like you can't ever come out. So at a young age, express those feelings, because then it only reinforces to your family at that young age that you're at, like, oh, this is happening now. It's not just happening at 23 when we're finding out about it. So I think being honest, but not like if you're really young, don't like put yourself out there too much. You know what I mean? Like protect your heart, protect yourself, because it's crazy out there. I've like just in my few, little, I guess a year now, like dating, I've just been like blown away by like how crazy the dating scene is. So I would say at a young age, just be as pure as you can for as long as you can. You know what I mean? Like live your life, but also don't suppress those parts of yourself, and honor them as you're growing, as if those thoughts and feelings are still there, that just reinforces who you are. And, I didn't truly know 100% who I was until probably about, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. I found out now who I am, like as a person, not just like my sexuality, but like who I am as a person. So yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. Yeah.
So finally, last question, very simple. What is love?
Oh my goodness. Love is that feeling when you see them and you just smile and you just can't wait to like get back home to them. Or love is the kiss on your forehead from your mom after she cooks your favorite meal. Love is seeing my tortoise in the morning when he comes out and he's ready to munch on carrots. But I think at the end of the day, love is for me like with that person that I'll spend the rest of my life with, and that I want to like honor and support and just eventually spend the rest of my life with. Someone who makes you feel safe and heard. And yeah, that's love.